The year is 1823. Veracruz, Mexico, the port city where Spanish colonial power is crumbling and revolution hangs thick in the tropical air. In the grand Casa Mendoza, overlooking the Gulf of Mexico, a secret is about to shatter the most powerful family in the region. A secret growing in the womb of Baroness Lucía Mendoza de Orozco. A secret that will cost lives, destroy fortunes, and rewrite what everyone thought they knew about love, power, and the brutal mathematics of colonial society. Picture this scene. Dawn breaks over Veracruz harbor. Ships from Spain arrive with news of political chaos in Madrid. The Mexican independence movement grows stronger every day. And in the Casa Mendoza, the 32-year-old Baroness stands before her mirror, hands trembling as they rest on her belly. She is 3 months pregnant. Her husband, Baron Augusto Mendoza, has been in Spain for 6 months, won't return for another 4. Everyone who can count will know the truth. The child isn't his. The father is a man who sleeps in the slave quarters, a man whose muscles were built cutting sugar cane, a man named Santiago. How did the most respected woman in Veracruz fall for her slave? Why did Santiago, who dreamed only of freedom, risk everything for a woman who legally owned him? And how does this romance end? Not with freedom, not with escape, but with something far more tragic and far more complex than anyone could have imagined. This is that story, the story that Mexico tried to bury for 2 centuries. The story of the Baroness and the slave who loved her, and the child who would destroy them both. Let me take you back to where it began. January 1822. Baron Augusto Mendoza purchased 20 new slaves for his sugarcane operation outside Veracruz. Among them was Santiago, 25 years old, born in Senegal, captured at 19 during a tribal war, sold to Portuguese slavers, shipped across the Atlantic in conditions that killed half his fellow captives. Santiago survived because of something unusual. He was massive, 6'4" in an era when most men stood 5'6". Shoulders like a bull, hands that could snap wood, back covered in whip scars from previous masters who feared his strength and tried to break him. But what the slavers didn't see was Santiago's intelligence. He learned Spanish in 3 months by listening, learned to read in secret by watching the overseer's children, learned the complex social hierarchy of Mexican colonial society just by observing. Santiago understood something crucial. Physical strength meant nothing in this world. The real power belonged to those who understood how the game was played. And in the Casa Mendoza, the game was run by one person, the Baroness. Lucía Mendoza de Orozco came from minor Spanish nobility. Married at 17 to Augusto Mendoza, a man 20 years older who wanted her family connections more than he wanted her. Augusto was brutal, cold, more interested in expanding his sugar empire than in his young bride. By the time Lucía was 32, she had given him 3 children, 2 daughters and a son, had endured 15 years of a loveless marriage, had learned to run the entire household while Augusto traveled constantly between Veracruz, Mexico City, and Spain. Lucía was beautiful in a way that made people uncomfortable. Pale skin, dark hair always severely styled, gray eyes that seemed to see through every lie. She dressed impeccably, ran the household with military precision. The servants feared her, the slaves obeyed her instantly, visiting dignitaries respected her intelligence. But no one knew the truth. Lucía was dying inside, starving for something her marriage could never provide. Connection, passion, someone who saw her as more than a decorative noblewoman. The first time Lucía noticed Santiago was March 1822. She was inspecting the sugarcane workers in the fields, something she did monthly to ensure productivity. Santiago was cutting cane under the brutal sun. His shirt was off. Every muscle in his back moved like machinery. But what caught Lucia's attention wasn't his body. It was his eyes. When she passed, every other slave looked down, averted their gaze. That was the rule. Slaves don't look at masters. But Santiago looked directly at her, for exactly 2 seconds, long enough to acknowledge her, not long enough to be punished for insolence. In those 2 seconds, Lucía saw something that made her breath catch. Intelligence, defiance, and something else, recognition. as if he saw past the title and the dress and the social position. Saw her. That night, Lucía couldn't sleep, couldn't stop thinking about those 2 seconds. Why had that slave looked at her? Why had it affected her so deeply? She told herself it meant nothing. Slaves looked at their masters all the time in small acts of rebellion. It was meaningless. But her body disagreed. Her pulse quickened every time she remembered. Over the next month, Lucía found excuses to inspect the fields more often, to walk past where Santiago worked, to catch those brief moments when he would look up, meet her eyes, look away. Neither acknowledged what was happening, but both knew. In May 1822, Baron Augusto announced he was traveling to Spain. Political situation there required his attention. He would be gone 6 months minimum, possibly longer. Lucía should manage everything in his absence. As always, Augusto left without even kissing his wife goodbye. The moment his ship disappeared over the horizon, something shifted in the Casa Mendoza. Lucía felt it. A loosening of chains she'd worn so long she'd forgotten they existed. 2 weeks after Augusto's departure, Lucía made a decision that would destroy everything. She summoned Santiago to the main house, not to her private chambers, not yet, to the study, neutral ground. When Santiago entered, Lucía was seated behind the massive desk, the symbol of power. She didn't look at him immediately. Let him stand. Let the silence build. "You can read," she finally said. It wasn't a question. Santiago's face showed nothing. "Yes, Señora." "Who taught you?" "I taught myself." "Why?" For the first time, Santiago smiled, slightly, dangerously, because knowledge is the only thing you can own that can't be taken away. Lucía felt something electric run through her. This was not a normal slave. This was someone playing the same game she was, someone who understood power dynamics as well as she did. "I need someone to organize the household ledgers," she said. "The current bookkeeper is stealing. I need someone intelligent, someone who can be trusted because they have everything to lose if they betray me. Someone like you." Santiago understood immediately. She was offering him access to the house, to her world, to proximity. "I can do that, Señora. You'll work in the study, every evening after field work. You'll report directly to me, no one else, as you wish." For 3 weeks, Santiago came to the study every evening, worked on the ledgers, fixed the bookkeeper's mistakes, exposed the theft, saved the Mendoza family thousands of pesos. Lucía would sit across from him pretending to read, actually watching him work, watching the concentration on his face, the intelligence in his eyes, the careful precision of his handwriting. They barely spoke, but the air between them crackled with electricity. Both knew where this was heading. Both were terrified. Both couldn't stop. The night it happened was June 23, 1822. A storm rolled in from the Gulf. Lightning split the sky. Rain hammered the windows. Santiago was working on the ledgers. Lucía was reading poetry. Badly. Her hands trembled. The book was upside down and she didn't notice. Finally, Santiago spoke. "Señora, may I ask you something?" "Yes." "Why am I really here? It's not about the ledgers. You could have hired a free accountant. Why me?" The question hung in the air. Lucía could have lied, could have maintained the pretense, could have preserved the social order. Instead, she did something insane. She told the truth. "Because when I look at you, I feel alive, and I haven't felt alive in 15 years. Silence. Then Santiago stood, walked around the desk, stopped inches from her. "Do you understand what you're risking, Señora? If anyone finds out, they'll kill me. They'll torture me in the plaza as an example. And you? They'll lock you in a convent for the rest of your life. Your children will be taken away. Your name will be destroyed forever." Lucía looked up at him. "I understand. Then why?" "Because I'd rather burn for one moment of truth than freeze for a lifetime of lies." Santiago reached out, touched her face. The first time a slave had ever touched a baroness voluntarily. The first time Lucía had been touched with genuine desire in her entire life. What happened next would echo through both their lives forever. For the next 4 months, Lucía and Santiago lived a double life. During the day, he worked the fields. She ran the household. They barely spoke in public, but every evening he came to the study, And what began as a purely physical affair evolved into something far more dangerous: love. Real, mutual, impossible love. Santiago taught Lucía about African philosophy, about the concept of Ubuntu, I am because we are, about the beauty of cultures Spain had tried to erase, about the dignity that slavery could never truly destroy. Lucía taught Santiago about European politics, literature, military strategy, about the revolution brewing in Mexico, about the independence movement that might, just might, change everything. They talked for hours, made love in stolen moments, planned a fantasy future that both knew could never exist, because reality was closing in. By October 1822, Lucía realized she was pregnant, and Baron Augusto had sent word he was returning home in December. The child would be born in June 1823, 7 months after his return. Everyone would know, everyone would count. Everyone would see that the child wasn't his. Lucía told Santiago on a cold November evening. She expected him to panic, to beg her to find a solution, to suggest she terminate the pregnancy. Instead, Santiago knelt before her, put his hand on her belly, and smiled. "We made something beautiful," he whispered. "In this world of ugliness, we made something pure. Santiago, they'll kill you. You understand that, right? When my husband returns and realizes what's happened, he'll have you executed." "I know." "Then why are you smiling?" "Because I was already dead, Lucía. From the moment I was captured, from the moment I was sold, I've been a walking corpse for 6 years. But you made me alive again. So even if I die tomorrow, I've already lived more in these 4 months than in my entire life." Lucía wept, because she realized something terrible. Santiago was ready to die for their child, but she wasn't ready to lose him. When Baron Augusto returned in December 1822, Lucía did something desperate. She seduced her husband, one time, just enough to create doubt about the pregnancy. Augusto, surprised but pleased by his wife's unusual affection, never suspected. For 2 months, Lucía's plan seemed to work. But then the child was born. June 15, 1823. After 18 hours of labor, Lucía gave birth to a son. The midwife wrapped the baby, handed him to the Baroness, and Lucía's blood turned to ice, because the child was dark, not obviously black, but darker than any Mendoza had ever been, with kinky hair, with features that couldn't be explained by Spanish genetics, with Santiago's eyes. The midwife, an elderly slave named Rosa, understood immediately, looked at Lucía with infinite sadness. "Señora, what do you want me to do?" Rosa whispered. It was a terrible question, because both women knew what it meant. Infants died all the time, especially in births this difficult. A pillow over the face, a claim of sudden illness. No one would question. The family honor would be preserved. Lucía would be safe. Lucía looked at her son, this tiny, perfect child, the product of the only real love she'd ever known, and made her choice. Register him as my husband's legitimate son. His name is Gabriel Mendoza y Orozco. Rosa's eyes widened. "But Señora, people will see. Let them see. He is my son, and I will protect him with everything I have." For 6 months the impossible held. Baron Augusto, who barely paid attention to his children anyway, accepted Gabriel as his son. The household staff whispered but said nothing aloud. Visiting relatives noticed the child's unusual appearance, but were too polite to comment directly. Lucía kept Gabriel close, nursed him herself instead of using a wet nurse, which was scandalous for a baroness. Spent hours with him, and every evening she would take Gabriel to the gardens, where Santiago, working nearby, could see his son. They never spoke, never touched. But Santiago would watch his son with such profound love that it broke Lucía's heart every single time. But secrets this big never stay buried. In January 1824, Teresa Orozco arrived for an extended visit. Augusto's cousin, a vicious woman who had always envied Lucía's position. Teresa saw Gabriel immediately, saw the dark skin, the kinky hair, the impossible genetics. She began asking questions, watching Lucía, watching the slaves, and then she saw it. Saw the way Lucía looked at Santiago when she thought no one noticed. Saw the way Santiago looked at Gabriel. Teresa smiled. She'd found her weapon. Teresa went directly to Baron Augusto, told him everything. Augusto didn't believe it at first, demanded proof. Teresa suggested a simple test. Bring Santiago to the house, put him in a room with Gabriel, watch how they interact. A slave will ignore a master's child, a father cannot. Augusto, now suspicious and furious, agreed. The trap was set. Santiago was brought to the main parlor, told to wait, had no idea why. Then Lucía entered, carrying 8-month-old Gabriel. The moment Gabriel saw Santiago, he reached out, made happy sounds, the way infants do when they see someone they recognize, someone they feel safe with. Santiago's face betrayed everything. Joy, love, pain. Augusto saw it all, understood in that instant that his honor had been destroyed, that his wife had given birth to a slave's child, that he was the laughingstock of Veracruz. What happened next was brutal. Augusto had Santiago dragged to the courtyard, chained. In front of the entire household, Augusto demanded the truth. Did you touch my wife? Santiago, knowing he was dead either way, made one final choice. He looked at Lucía, then at Gabriel, then at Augusto. Yes, I love her, and that child is mine. The only thing I'm guilty of is loving someone too good for this cruel world. Augusto ordered Santiago whipped, 50 lashes, then branded, then sold to the silver mines of Zacatecas, where slaves died within months from toxic exposure. Lucía screamed, begged, offered everything she had. Augusto backhanded her across the face. You will watch. You will see what happens to slaves who forget their place, and to wives who betray their husbands. Santiago was whipped, each lash tearing flesh. He didn't scream, didn't beg, kept his eyes on Lucía, mouthing words she couldn't hear but understood. I love you, protect our son. After the whipping, Santiago was thrown in chains, would be transported to Zacatecas in the morning. That night, Lucía did something insane. She went to the slave quarters, drugged the guards with laudanum, unlocked Santiago's chains. Run, there's a horse by the north gate, money in the saddlebag, go to Tampico, find the independence fighters, they'll protect you. Santiago, barely conscious from the beating, looked at her. Come with me. Bring Gabriel. We'll disappear together. I can't. If I run, Augusto will hunt us forever. We'll use all his resources. We'll never be safe. But if I stay, I can protect Gabriel, can raise him, can make sure he knows his father was a hero. Lucía, go. If you love us, go. Live, fight, and know that we will remember you every single day. Santiago kissed her one last time, then vanished into the night. By dawn, he was gone. Augusto was furious, blamed Lucía, confined her to her chambers, took Gabriel away, gave him to a wet nurse in Mexico City, told everyone the child died of illness. Lucía never saw her son again for 3 years. Lucía lived in isolation in her own home. Augusto refused to divorce her, too scandalous. But he erased her. No social events, no visitors. She existed as a ghost in Casa Mendoza. Then in 1827, news reached Veracruz. A rebel leader in Tampico had been captured, a former slave named Santiago who'd become a hero of the independence movement. The Spanish authorities planned a public execution. Lucía, hearing this, did the unthinkable, escaped her confinement, stole money, traveled to Tampico disguised as a widow, bribed her way into the prison, found Santiago chained in a cell. He was 30 years old, looked 60, beaten, starved, but his eyes still burned. You shouldn't have come, he whispered. I had to see you one more time. Had to tell you, Gabriel is alive. I lied to Augusto. Our son is being raised by my sister in Puebla. He's healthy, he's smart, and when he's old enough, I'll tell him about his father. About the man who chose love over survival, who fought for freedom, who never stopped being brave. Santiago wept. Thank you, I love you, I will always love you, and I you, in this life and whatever comes after. They had 10 minutes. Then the guards took him. Santiago was executed the next day, hanged in the plaza. Lucía watched from the crowd, made sure he saw her face in his final moments. made sure he knew he wasn't alone. Lucía returned to Veracruz. Augusto died 2 years later. Heart attack. Lucía was 39, finally free. She retrieved Gabriel from Puebla, raised him openly as her son, told him everything when he turned 15. Gabriel became a lawyer, fought for the abolition of slavery in Mexico, married, had children, carried his father's name, Santiago, as his middle name, Gabriel Santiago Mendoza, a name that honored both sides of his heritage. Lucía lived to 71, never remarried, spent her final years writing. Her memoir, hidden for decades, was discovered in 1954 in a convent archive. It told the entire story: the love, the sacrifice, the impossible choice, the ending that wasn't happy but was true. Because some loves don't end in freedom, don't end in escape. They end in sacrifice, in memory, in children who carry the blood of two worlds, in stories that refuse to be forgotten. This is how the romance between the Baroness of Veracruz and her strongest slave ended, not with victory, but with something rarer, with dignity, with truth, with a love that even death couldn't erase.